So just to recap on some of the events that have taken place since our last update, on November 10th, we held our third annual Six Nations Firefighters Gala. This was held at Carmen's on Stone Church Road in Hamilton, and it was very successful and quite an elegant night. I was glad to see so many community members out. On November 11th, I took part in the Remembrance Day ceremonies in the city of Hamilton. And later in the afternoon, I attended a session that was held at the Gathering Place. We had a special guest with Dr. Gabor Mate, who is a specialist and a speaker on addictions. On November 12th, I was asked to speak at St. George United Church in St. George. And on November 14th, Brantford campus of Six Nations Polytech was open for reveal and for tours. November 14th, prior to our council meeting, we had Safe Streets, Save Lives presentations that were made here at council to officers and civilians from Six Nations and from Brant County and from the city of Brantford. On November 15th, we also met with representatives of Brant Healthcare who are doing work up at the Brantford General Hospital. On November 16th, I was invited to Toronto to attend a luncheon at the Empire Club to listen to a speech by the CEO of Hydro One, Mayo Schmidt. And later that day, we toured the Deloitte offices in Toronto, which we might use as some space we may need when we're in Toronto. I then traveled to Victoria as I was invited to speak at the University of Victoria's Indigenous Economic Development Conference on that day, and it was quite successful. I shared a panel with Dr. John Burrows and Dr. Sophie Pierre, and the panel was moderated by Miles Richardson, who is the former president of the Haida Nation. We also had our Santa Claus parade here on the 18th, and unfortunately I had to miss it this year. We were also host to the Walking with Our Sisters exhibit, which was held in Six Nations at the Gathering Place Convention Center from November 18th to 26th, and this was in line with the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women. Then there was the Leaders in the Legislature, and the All-Ontario Chiefs Conference was held in Toronto on November 20th, 21st, 22nd, and 23rd. Councillors Audrey Paulus-Bombury and Carl Hill and myself attended this, and it was quite an extensive week. We had many meetings going on in the morning, the evening, and during the day we met with a number of cabinet ministers, including Premier Wynne, who were there to address and take questions from all the chiefs. On November 22nd, I also attended the 4th Energy Roundtable at the Chiefs of Ontario with representatives from the Ministry of Energy. The minister was there, Hydro One, OPG, Ontario Energy Board, and in IESO. And on the 23rd, I took part in an announcement at Queen's Park that Deputy Premier Deb Matthews made. She's also the Minister for Advanced Education, that they were going forward with legislation for the Aboriginal institutes in Ontario to issue credits. Two of those institutes are Six Nations Polytech and the Ongohongwe Skills and Trade Centre. They also announcing the formation of an Indigenous Advisory Council. And on November 24th, I was in Ottawa for a Iroquois Caucus strategy session to prepare for our meeting with the minister that I mentioned earlier. And November 25th, we were host to the Sing here in our community, and I want to thank Cam Hill and his team who pulled that together. On the 26th, I attended at Mohawk Chapel a service where Pastor Rosalind Elm, who is from Oneida, was inducted as the Royal Chaplain of the Mohawk Chapel. She is also the pastor for Anglican churches here in our community. On the 28th, we continued our meetings with representatives of the Ministry of Community Safety and Corrections concerning the closing of the Brantford Jail. And that evening at the Community Hall, we presented the High School Education Awards for attendance and also for high average. We also presented plaques to the Under-19 basketball team who were recently in a tournament in Sault Ste. Marie, to the Six Nations Arrows who won the Minto Cup, and to Thomas Anderson for a mural he did for Brantford Library, but as well for the water tower. On November 29th, Phil Montour and I spoke at the Woodland Cultural Centre to a number of people from the Ontario Ministry of Agriculture who were holding an event in Toronto. And on November 30th, I took part in an event in Toronto with Toronto Council Fire, where they launched the Restoration of Identity Project, which is a turtle climbing up on stones who is going to be the monument or the commemoration for residential school survivors, and it's going to be placed at Toronto City Hall, Nathan Phillips Square, and the project should be completed next October. On the December 1st, I attended an anti-racism conference in Toronto along with some of our staff and some of our youth. And December 3rd, the Mohawk Chapel held their annual Christmas services. And I was in Ottawa that night along with Councillor Carl Hill to attend an Iroquois caucus meeting. And on December 4th, I was invited along with all women chiefs and councillors in the country to attend a meeting with Minister Carolyn Bennett, the Minister of Crown First Nations Relations. This was the first meeting of its kind, and Minister Bennett is working to try and work more closely with the women chiefs, and she's planning on a national summit later in 2018. And we were in Ottawa for the AFN Special Assembly, which was held December 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th. I was there along with Councillor Carl Hill. And Councillor Audrey Paulus Bomley was there for a short period of time.